Hello everyone, and welcome to Fright Night. Are you ready for another scary story? A handsome young man, a nighttime drive down an isolated forest road, and a beautiful woman stranded and in desperate need of a ride. Not all urban legends are terrifying. Some, such as this classic, touch on loneliness, random chance, and love at first sight. Are you sure you're ready to hear the tale of the Hitchhiker? The clock struck 10 p.m., and Jack chugged what remained of his coffee as he flipped through countless documents strewn across his desk, determined to stay focused on the project at hand. A year prior, he had scored a job at one of the most desirable companies in the region, and through his short tenure, he'd already worked his way up to the position of manager, which, at only 23 years old, was no small feat. The pay was good, and the benefits were unbelievable. However, there were some downsides, being the fact that he usually didn't get off until 11 o'clock at night, sometimes even later, that he had to travel about an hour and a half to and from his job and work each day, and also that because of his long hours, Jack had pretty much given up on any form of social life, much less dating. He didn't mind too much though, as the later it got, the quieter the office was, and truth be told, he rather enjoyed his night drives. Tonight was different though. According to an updated weather forecast, it was going to freeze and snow just a bit past midnight, and, distracted by everything his boss had put on his plate, Jack had forgotten to turn his sprinkler lines off. If he didn't get home before the freeze, the results could be catastrophic. He worked as fast as he could, but despite his best efforts, when he finally clocked out, it was already 11:15. He half sprinted from his desk, down the stairs, through the lobby, across the parking lot, started his car, and departed in record time. As Jack headed towards the edge of town, he did the math in his head. No matter how fast he drove, he wouldn't get home until well after the freeze. He was in big trouble, unless... Suddenly, an idea dawned on him. Ever since he'd been hired, he'd used the same route to travel between work and home, being the main highway, but there was another route. There was the old highway. While the new highway opted for curving around elevations and through valleys as a means of creating a safer, albeit longer drive, the old highway was much more direct and would shave a whole hour off of his travel time. But the thought of driving this weathered and overgrown roadway gave Jack chills. For generations past, locals to the area had passed down a number of stories surrounding this route. They all claimed that it was haunted by the ghosts of those who had died in countless car accidents, or that its fringes were stalked by terrifying monsters. Whatever the case, Jack was an adult, and he didn't have time to buy into such stories. After only a moment of hesitation, he took the exit that led to the old highway. As Jack drove further and further away from town, several things became quickly apparent. Firstly, there were no working streetlights along this stretch, and secondly, judging by all the branches and rocks littering the asphalt, even the county had abandoned this lonely strip. He noted that he hadn't seen a single other vehicle along his drive, and through several segments, he was forced to slow to a crawl in order to let deer or other wildlife cross in front of him. About 10 minutes in, however, he spotted something through the trees that caught his eye. It was an odd glow, like artificial light of some sort, but as for the source, he couldn't quite make it out. After rounding 2 more corners, Jack realized the glow he had seen was a lone streetlight, and to his utter disbelief, under the streetlight was a young woman. As Jack got closer to this woman, he could make out several details. She was probably around his age, and she was devastatingly gorgeous, with long black hair, flawless fair skin, and a striking figure that was made all the more obvious by the beautiful and form-fitting white dress she was wearing. Strangely, though she was well-dressed and seemingly put together, Jack noted that she had no shoes on, and on such a cold night, this detail seemed a bit odd to him. She must have been in trouble. As he approached, he slowed his car to a stop. "Hey," he hollered out the window. "Are you okay? Do you need a ride?" "Oh, thank God," she replied with the most perfect smile he'd ever laid eyes on. "Yes, I would love a ride. I'm completely stranded, and honestly, this road is giving me the creeps." "Hop in," he laughed. "Where are you headed?" "I live in the next town up the highway," she replied as she jumped in the passenger seat and buckled herself in. "I'm Sarah, by the way." "Jack," he responded, "and that's not too far from where I'm heading. I'll get you there in no time." As the two drove on, they chatted. To Jack's surprise, they had a number of things in common. They both liked the same music, the same movies. They liked hiking, camping, road trips, the beach. The list seemed endless, and after a while, Jack began to feel a strong attraction to Sarah. Several times, he glanced over to find her staring at him with this smile, a smile that told him she was feeling the same. Before he knew it, they had reached the next town over, where Sarah directed him to her house. He parked out front, and the two prepared to say goodbye, but just before Jack could open his mouth, Sarah leaned in quickly and surprised him with a kiss. The kiss was long, deep, and sincere, and it caused his heart to skip a beat. Was this true love at first sight? So, he started, but before he could finish, she cut him off. "Yes, I'd love to see you again, Jack," said Sarah, staring straight into his eyes, that same comforting smile on her face. "Okay, when?" he asked. "How about tomorrow?" she suggested. "How about when you get off, you come over here and we go out to get a bite to eat?" "Sounds perfect," replied Jack with a smile. "Okay," she said softly. "I'll see you tomorrow, Jack." She surprised him with another kiss before flashing that smile one last time and hurrying into her house. Jack was ecstatic. He rushed back to his home, shut off his sprinkler line, and laid down in bed, after which he tossed and turned for hours in anticipation of his upcoming date. The following day, his work seemed to inch by at a crawl. Every time he managed to focus, his thoughts would stray back to Sarah and that charming smile that told him everything was going to be okay. Regardless of this distraction, however, somehow he managed to wrap his work up surprisingly quickly. He clocked out early and rushed toward Sarah's house, but when he got there, he was a little confused. All of the lights were dimmed, and it looked like she had possibly already gone to sleep. He cautiously approached the front door and knocked very lightly. After a moment, he heard someone shuffling around inside the house and saw a light come on. When the door opened, however, he was even more surprised to find an older woman standing in front of him. Hi," he started awkwardly. "Is Sarah home?" The older woman looked at him closely, then a slow smile crept over her face. "Yes, dear," she replied. "Why don't you come in for a moment?" Jack followed the woman into the house, where she directed him into the living room. He took a seat on the couch and glanced around the space. There were several pictures of this woman with Sarah, and he quickly deduced that she was Sarah's mother. "I'm Rebecca," the woman introduced herself and then proceeded to confirm his guess. "I'm Sarah's mother. How did you guys meet?" Jack relayed the story of their meeting and was honest about their kisses and the feeling that seemed shared between them. And as he did so, Rebecca's smile grew. At the point in which he'd finished, a significant amount of time had passed. "So, that's it," he continued. "Is Sarah here? I'd really love to take your daughter on a date." "She's not here right now," replied Rebecca. "In fact, she hasn't been here for a while, Jack. What I'm about to tell you isn't going to be easy to hear. 3 years ago, Sarah was riding with her boyfriend down that old highway. He was a bad man and was very mentally abusive. I'm not sure what led up to it, but while they were driving, they got in a fight. Right amidst the coldest part of winter, he kicked her out of his truck in the middle of nowhere, in nothing more than the dress she'd worn to dinner, and without so much as shoes on her feet. She froze to death out there, Jack, and ever since, men have been showing up here swearing they picked her up and gave her a ride home, though you're the first that she's ever kissed." Jack was devastated, and though for years he'd drive that old highway again and again, hoping for a single chance to see Sarah just one more time, that spot under the streetlight was always empty. Sarah had finally found her peace. What a chilling legend, but where did it come from? And is there any truth to it? While several urban legends steal the spotlight when considering the genre as a whole, it may surprise some that the tale of the vanishing hitchhiker is actually quite possibly the oldest urban legend in existence, with roots that trace back to ancient Roman times, in which some told of a chariot traveling between towns picking up a rider who imparts some sort of wisdom or warning before vanishing mid-ride. And later, the tale was perpetuated in European culture through the Middle Ages, when folk began talking of riders who encountered strangers during various journeys or pilgrimages, who eventually revealed themselves to be spirits, angels, or even omens of death, and that often vanished suddenly, leaving witnesses thoroughly perturbed. By the 19th century, as stagecoaches and rail travel became popularized, these stories would adapt and would include passengers or drivers who encountered strangers boarding their coaches or engines that would always vanish mid-drive. In these variations, and mirroring our modern legend, it was usually later discovered that said spirits belonged to people who had died years prior. Incidentally, these newer fables would bridge the gap between traditional legend and our more modern renditions of the story. Some of the first Americanized versions of the Vanishing Hitchhiker that we still tell today would begin developing through the turn of the 20th century with the creation of the automobile, and though the legend was widespread in smaller circles, some preliminary documentation by prominent folklorists would occur through the 1930s and 40s, when long-distance car travel was becoming all the rage, and when roads, especially at night, were considered to be liminal spaces, places of uncertainty, isolation, and danger. Through the remainder of the 40s and 1950s, folklorists were able to document a number of variations to the tale, and the Vanishing Hitchhiker was categorized as one of, if not the most internationally flexible legend in circulation. Finally, folklorist Herald Brunvon, who is famous for his work on urban legends, would dedicate a full chapter to this age-old story in his 1981 book, The Vanishing Hitchhiker: American Urban Legends and Their Meanings, and would delve into a broader academic study of the fable, its variants, and its true intentions, all the while solidifying its place in American culture. From an academic standpoint, like many urban legends, this particular story acts as what else but a cautionary tale, and warns its readers of the dangers of both picking up hitchhikers and of driving unfamiliar roads after dark. But is there any truth to this eerie story? Chillingly, while many urban legends hold little to no weight in regards to real-world situations, through history, there are actually a number of accounts that directly follow the Vanishing Hitchhiker's narrative, and countless cities that boast roads on which, purportedly, travelers have either sighted or picked up young women in need of rides, who either disappear mid-drive, or that they drop off only to later discover that the rider in question died weeks, months, or even years prior. One of the most prominent of such stories is that of Resurrection Mary, which began through the 1930s in Chicago, Illinois, and that involved both the local Archer Avenue and Resurrection Cemetery. As it's told, the ghost of Mary belongs to a girl that was either killed in a car accident, in a hit and run, or that's grave was disturbed and moved within the graveyard, leaving her restless spirit to wander Archer Avenue. And since the 30s, many have reported traveling this roadway and picking up a woman matching her description, who then proceeds to direct them to the cemetery, where she promptly vanishes, sometimes leaving behind handprints on their windows. Of the many witnesses who have encountered Mary, one more high-profile account actually involves a police officer who documented sighting a young woman trapped within the graveyard's fence calling out for help, and who disappeared without a trace. Later, when he inspected the gate, he found it strangely warped, with what appeared to be scorched handprints burned into its bars. Across the globe, a number of different versions of this story have emerged over the years. In Mexico and Central America, some tell of a beautiful female hitchhiker who claims she's heading home from a party or a dance, and who directs drivers to either an abandoned home or cemetery before vanishing. In the Philippines, numerous accounts tell of spectral hitchhikers on rural roads that are often associated with the spirits of those who died violent deaths near. In Europe, phantom hitchhikers have been delivering prophecies or warnings to those who pick them up for literally a millennia now. And finally, in Hawaii, popular stories document instances in which drivers pick up a woman who is seemingly in need of a ride, who it turns out is actually the goddess Pele, testing the generosity of mankind. At the end of the day, whether you choose to believe in this timeless story is really up to you, but its prominence and reoccurrence are not factors to be taken lightly. For who really knows what lurks out there in the shadows, stalking the lesser-traveled roadways? So next time you find yourself driving at night, fighting off sleep on some remote route, and you happen across a gorgeous young traveler in need of a ride, keep your walls up, get her straight home, don't stop, and most definitely don't fall in love, for you very well may be in the presence of the Vanishing Hitchhiker.